This man has performed well over 100,000 exorcisms, including some of the most disturbing ones documented in his very own writing. This man is Father Amorth, and he was once the Vatican's chief exorcist, also known as the Vatican Demon Slayer. And in today's video, we're going to go into his story and quite a few of the demonic possessions that he encountered. So if you guys are ready, grab a snack. This is going to be a little bit of a longer video, and let's get into it. Hey guys, now welcome back. If you guys are new here, I just want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Ashley and I talk about crime, creepy, and unbelievable stories. If you guys are recurring subscribers, thank you so much for your support. It really does mean the world to me. Now, if you guys want more crime, creepy content in short format, head over to my TikTok. I post on there 1, 2, sometimes even 3 times a day, depending on my mood. I post a lot more content on there and a lot more exclusive stuff on there as well. So if that's something you guys are interested in, go ahead and take a look. I will link it in the description box below. Secondly, I just want to let you guys know that I am trying to figure out the audio situation. I've been tweaking a few different things here and there. I've definitely seen your comments. So thank you for being super patient with me. I am trying to figure this out. So let me know if this video has better audio than the previous ones. Your feedback is definitely appreciated. All right, so enough rambling. Let's get into the story of Father Amorth. Now, this guy was a bit of a controversial figure. He was known to make a few quite outlandish claims, including that Hitler and Stalin were both possessed by the devil, which, to be honest, is not entirely impossible to believe considering what these two people did. And surprisingly, there is going to be a new movie coming out on Father Amorth later this year, which we'll get into later in this video. Now, to give you a little bit of a teaser of what we're going to talk about today, there was a time when Father Amorth was performing an exorcism, and he recounted the story of the devil telling him that he can make a woman who was possessed under him to regurgitate a radio. And of course, surprisingly, she actually did end up doing this. Although the radio was in several pieces, she ended up regurgitating this radio right in front of Father Amorth. But let's rewind a little bit and go back to the beginning of his story. Now, Father Amorth was also known as Gabriel Amorth, and he was born in Modena, Italy on May 1st, 1925. He was the youngest of 5 boys, and his father was also a lawyer, and there was not much known about his mother. It's likely that she was a homemaker given the time and the location where he was born. Not a whole lot is known about Gabriel's early life as a child, but as a teenager, Gabriel fought in the Italian resistance during World War II and even ended up earning a bravery medal for his efforts. As an adult, Gabriel did initially follow in his father's footsteps, becoming a lawyer, and he even ended up working for the future Italian Prime Minister Giulio Andreotti for a time. However, then he took an interest in matters of the church and the Holy Bible. There was even an interview where he was quoted as saying that he knew he was destined for the word of the Lord ever since he was 10 years old. Catholicism is also a fundamental part of Italy, so in 1951, that's when he ended up taking his holy orders. And by 1954, he was an ordained Roman Catholic priest, and by 1986, he was assigned to assist the chief exorcist of Rome at the time, who was Father Amontini. In 1992, unfortunately, Amontini did end up passing away, but when that happened, Father Amorth was named as his successor. Although Father Amorth did have the opportunity to perform over 100,000 exorcisms, he was quite adamant in his belief that a majority of these exorcisms were a result of demonic possession. It's believed that only about 100 of these were truly for the purpose of ridding a very evil demonic entity within someone. Father Amorth was also said to have been quite picky with who he performed these rites on. They are quite a heavy thing to go through. And so he didn't just want to perform them on anyone, especially if this particular person would likely need multiple sessions. He would often refuse to see someone if they hadn't been to a mental health doctor in the first place, because he believed that many of these people who appeared to be quote unquote possessed were likely suffering from a sort of mental illness. This, though, didn't diminish his belief in the difference between good and evil. With the high amount of exorcisms he performed over the years, he could only attribute it to a few things, including superstition, magic, Satanism, Ouija boards, and even yoga, which was quite a controversial claim. He also believed that Judas had fallen victim to the devil himself, which is essentially why he had sold out Jesus all those years ago. His comments on yoga, like I said, did earn him quite a lot of scrutiny. It was at the film festival in Umbria in 2011 where he claimed that yoga was satanic because it led to the practice of Hinduism and that all Eastern religions were based on the false belief of reincarnation. He then claimed that yoga was satanic, leading to evil, just like reading Harry Potter, because essentially it was based on witchcraft. Now, I don't agree on these claims of his. I'm just telling you guys what he was known to say. So although a lot of his beliefs were certainly questionable, the experiences this man had over the years as an exorcist just can't help but make you wonder what is out there and what the truth could possibly be. In the end, though, he really did believe that all of these things would open up individuals to demonic possession and make them extremely vulnerable. But most of all, he said that it was middle-aged women that were likely to be the most vulnerable. This was because he believed that middle-aged women were more likely to seek answers outside of faith, and they would go through different means of new age or ritualistic means such as psychics, tarot cards, crystals, and whatnot. When he was asked whether or not he had ever seen Satan, he replied with, "Satan is pure spirit. He often appears as something else to mislead, and that sadly Satan has taken over the masses, with the majority of people no longer believing in God." And this was one of his most controversial claims. He believed that Satan had even reached within the Vatican. He claimed that the disappearance of Emanuela Orlandi was a direct result of this. And if you don't know who she is, Emanuela Orlandi was a citizen of Vatican City who disappeared in Rome in 1983. Father Amorth believed that she was taken by the Vatican police and foreign diplomats for the purpose of trafficking and these very inappropriate illegal adult parties where they use young children for their own forbidden pleasures. There's also a really good Netflix documentary on this that came out a few months ago. If you've never heard of Emanuela's story, it does a really good job of detailing what happened, and I'm honestly surprised it has not received much more attention. So initially, Father Amorth was participating in exorcisms at one of Rome's most famous churches called the Church of the Holy Stairs. However, this didn't last very long because the screams of the people who were said to have been possessed were heard on the street and within the walls of the church, which essentially ended up scaring people away, making them quite fearful to go near the church out of fear that they would too become possessed. He then moved his exorcisms to a much smaller room located at the headquarters of his order known as Paulist Fathers. That's where he settled on a small room that measured only 9 by 15. There was not quite a lot of space in here, but it was what he needed. It was a controlled environment with enough room to fit a bed if necessary that also had constraints. But of course, any exorcist's room is not complete without its fair share of religious memorabilia. Father Amorth made sure to decorate the entire room with crucifixes, pictures of Mary Magdalene, pictures of Michael the Archangel, and Pope John Paul II. which were said to have irritated the spirits quite a bit. As serious as these matters were to Father Amorth, he did not let the fear of the devil consume him, which was essential to his work. He was actually known to be quite humorous throughout the years, and he even used his humor against these evil entities. On one occasion, he even asked an evil spirit the following question: "Do you know why the devil flees when he sees me? Because I am uglier than he is." Which you kind of have to give him some credit. I don't know how many people would still be able to have a sense of humor doing that kind of work and being surrounded by so much negative energy. So the time came for Father Amorth's first exorcism, and it was anything but introductory. Although he had been assisting his previous mentor with several exorcisms in the past, it came to a time where he had to do one on his own, and it was anything but easy. He actually came face to face with Satan himself. It was 1997 when he was met with what looked like an ordinary man. However, the man in question was said to have arrived with a priest and a translator. Father Amorth was quite confused about this because they were in Rome at the time. The man was Italian, he spoke Italian, everyone in the room essentially spoke Italian, so he didn't understand why a translator was needed. It wasn't until the priest who accompanied the man told Father Amorth that the man did definitely speak Italian, but the demon that was possessing him would force him to only speak in English. As the exorcism began, Father Amorth was reciting from the Bible, and at this point, the man was said to have barely flinched. It wasn't until Father Amorth asked for the help of Jesus that the man completely changed. His eyes sharply focused on Father Amorth as he began to scream in English. Every curse word you can imagine was spewing out of his mouth. He was spitting towards Father Amorth, and he even tried to attack him physically. It wasn't until he commanded the demon in Latin that he settled down, but this was very short-lived. Shortly after, the man's antics grew in intensity. He was growling, he was screaming, drooling, even foaming at the mouth, similar to a rabid animal. And this continued throughout the entire exorcism until Father Amorth commanded the evil entity to reveal its identity. And that's when it responded with, quote unquote, "I am Lucifer." You wouldn't think it would be possible, but this man's possession just got worse throughout the entire ordeal. His eyes started rolling back to the back of his head, only showing the white parts of his eyeballs. His head turned around in an unnatural angle, and at one point he even arched his back backwards for 20 minutes, but that wasn't even the worst part. The room then got ice cold, with a sudden impending feeling of doom taking over the entire environment. There were ice crystals forming on all of the windows, and this was right before the man's body began to levitate 3 feet off the floor. All Father Amorth could do at this point was continue reciting his prayers and the word of God. Eventually, the man did collapse onto a chair, with Lucifer voicing one single thing before disappearing. He announced to everyone in the room the exact date and time that he would release the man from his possession. After that, Father Amorth kept seeing this man on a weekly basis to continue his exorcisms. Depending on the severity of the case, like I said earlier, some people might need to undergo several exorcisms that can last days, weeks, and some people have even been known to be possessed for years. It's also believed that the more evil the entity it is, or the more amount of evil entities that are said to possess any particular person, the longer and harder it will be to exorcise them. So you can only imagine how long and arduous the process must have been in order to remove Satan himself from this poor man. Nonetheless, a few weeks later, there was quite a noticeable change in the man's aura. It seemed that Lucifer had actually let him go as he had promised. Father Amorth then proceeded to ask the man what happened on the appointed time that Lucifer said that he would release him. The man gave a very strange and almost unbelievable story. Quite literally, on the exact day, time, and even down to the minute that Satan had said he would release the man, He said that he had began to howl like he had never done before. When it was over, he said he felt much lighter. He felt like he had been released and he felt like he was given a new chance at life. Another notable case that Father Amorth had to experience was that of a 14-year-old northern Italian girl. She had already been visiting a local exorcist in Brescia, Italy, but it wasn't working. The priest there then sought out help and went straight towards Father Amorth in Rome. During the exorcism, the demon was asked why it had taken possession over this young girl, to which he replied, "Because she is the best of the parish." It would then take another 12 entire years for Father Amorth to be able to finally release the demons from this young girl. Now, seeing so many possessions and having all of this firsthand experience, Father Amorth began to notice certain patterns or signs that revealed to him that someone was truly possessed with a demonic spirit. Unfortunately, because so many of the symptoms of demonic possession often mimic those of mental illness, it was very hard for him to tell at the beginning which of the two he was dealing with. But once the exorcism began, it was very evident to him which of the two he was being confronted with. Whenever he was faced with a true demonic possession, these are some of the symptoms that he said he would notice. The demons would only speak in English because they refused to speak in Latin since they absolutely detested that language. This was only a notable symptom, though, if the person that was possessed didn't already speak English. Spitting was also another big one, but most telling of all was when the victim would regurgitate unusual objects. It got to the point where Father Amorth had seen so many people regurgitate strange objects that he ended up starting a collection of these very unusual things. A few examples of the things he saw people throw up were shards of glass, fingernails, keys, and even pieces of a radio, like I mentioned earlier. Another big giveaway was unnatural human super strength, and there was one particular case where he witnessed an 11-year-old boy push off 3 grown police officers as they tried to hold him down, which is something that we would all classify as humanly impossible. In 2016, something very rare happened. Father Amorth gave permission for an exorcism to be filmed, and the lucky director of this documentary would be William Friedkin, the director of the cult classic The Exorcist. Which, by the way, Father Amorth was quite a big fan of the movie The Exorcist because he said it closely resembled what a true demonic possession and exorcism really looked like. The documentary in question was called The Devil and Father Amorth, where he performs an exorcism on a woman named Rosa. I've also seen her be referred to as Christina, but regardless, her real name was kept a secret for privacy reasons. She was in her mid-30s, and in 2015, her demeanor suddenly changed so drastically that it ended up preventing her from working or having any sort of normal life. Her friends and family noticed that her behavior would get much worse and aggressive during Catholic holidays like Palm Sunday and even Easter. Her father also noticed that Rosa would act very odd during church, something that he had seen before. So you see, Rosa's father had already experienced an exorcism in the past because his very own sister was once possessed by a demonic entity. She had also been taken to see Father Amorth in 2012, where it took several sessions for whatever demonic entity that was possessing her to finally release her. So when Rosa's father saw his own daughter acting the same way that his sister did, he automatically knew what was going on. By this point, Father Amorth had already performed 8 exorcisms on Rosa, and the one that was going to be filmed would have been her 9th. At the ceremony, Rosa was also joined by her parents, her boyfriend, William, Father Amorth, and 4 additional priests, which was quite a lot of people being stuffed into this small room. Throughout the ceremonies, Father Amorth came to the conclusion that Rosa had been targeted from her boyfriend's sister, believe it or not. It was widely believed that she performed black magic and that Rosa's boyfriend and his sister were part of some sort of satanic cult. As the ninth ceremony began, everyone formed a circle around Rosa and everyone joined hands as they began to recite the Lord's Prayer and the Hail Mary. And almost right away, Rosa's torment was obvious to everyone in the room. Her eyes began to roll to the back of her head. Her head was also nodding quite sporadically and sometimes violently right before she ended up slipping into a deep trance. Father Amorth then commanded the evil entity to release Rosa in Latin, saying, "I exorcise, O God, this unclean spirit." That was when Rosa's body began to convulse quite violently while she cried out loud. She then went limp for a few moments before the thrashing and convulsing started up again, but this time all of the priests had to hold her down because she was just said to have been so aggressive and almost violent and even started foaming at the mouth. Father Amorth kept focused and he just kept reciting his lines as he needed to do so, commanding the demon to leave, but of course it absolutely refused. Rosa then began to yell out my in Latin, which means never. The yelling just kept getting louder and louder as the prayers kept going, and it was very clear that the word of God was extremely disturbing to whatever entity was holding Rosa captive. Suddenly, a deep voice could be heard that definitely did not belong to Rosa or to anyone else in the room. And in Latin, it ended up saying, don't touch her, I am Satan." The room then got completely ice cold and everyone started sweating, which is something that should not be possible. Father Amorth then asked the demon how many of them were present, to which it replied 80 legions, followed by repeating that Rosa was theirs and absolutely refusing to leave her alone. Father Amorth then whispered, "Rest, creature of God," to which Rosa reacted quite positively to. It was just like she had come out of her possession. She was herself again, and although she couldn't remember what had just happened, she was starting to kind of go back to normal. The room temperature had also gone back to normal as well, no more freezing temperatures or absolutely terrifying chills going through everyone's backs. After the exorcism, Rosa was interviewed about how she felt, and she replied saying that every time she undergoes an exorcism that she feels a little bit closer to freedom, but that she could also feel the devil suffering inside of her, which honestly sounds quite terrifying. When it came to Rosa's 10th exorcism, it did not go as planned. Rosa had canceled her appointment with Father Amorth several times, but eventually she ended up agreeing to meet William for an interview. But this time it would not be in Rome, it would be at a basilica in a town called Alatri, where Rosa lived, which was approximately 2 hours away from Rome. Once the group met up, including Rosa's boyfriend and Rosa's brother, they all decided to meet at the entrance of this church, and Rosa almost immediately started acting uncontrollably. She was growling again, she was foaming at the mouth, and although the men were restraining her, she managed to break free and even started sliding around on the floor, similar to a snake, with a devilish smile that completely consumed her face. And to this day, William remembers that smile, and it even is said to haunt him in his nightmares. As all this was happening, Rosa's family had a change of heart, and they no longer wanted William to film what was going on. They no longer wanted him to show the world what was happening to Rosa. They then got into a very heated argument while Rosa was still thrashing around violently. Rosa, when she was speaking as Satan, would keep encouraging William to show the world the video. William, however, had a very different opinion. He thought that it was crucial for the world to see what was going on, to see that there was much more to life and to reality than what we can see with our eyes. However, whenever Rosa would participate in this conversation or argument, she would end up speaking as Satan, and Satan surprisingly agreed with William. He wanted him to continue filming and wanted to make sure that he would show the entire world this video. However, her family was super adamant that they just did not want this posted anywhere. They wanted no part in it, fearing that the world would make a mockery out of their pain and suffering. And it even got so bad during this argument that Rosa's family threatened to murder William, which is something that he said that he still lives with to this day. Thankfully, William was able to escape the situation, and he did so, leaving Rosa and her family inside of the basilica as the doors of the church slammed behind him. After that, there was no more Rosa. Not even Father Amorth was able to get in touch with her, which led him to believe that Rosa's boyfriend had taken complete control of the situation. And to this day, we have absolutely no idea whether Rosa or not was able to get rid of these evil entities. After the exorcism of Rosa was filmed, William really wanted to know whether or not whatever he had filmed was truly a demonic possession or if it was just some sort of hocus pocus. He classified himself as an agnostic, so he wasn't quite sure what to make of it. He decided that he would show the footage to two of the world's leading neurosurgeons in order to get their unbiased opinion. One of these doctors was Dr. Neil Martin, chief of neurosurgery at UCLA Medical Center. When he watched the footage, he was said to have been amazed at what he was seeing. Right away, he said that he knew Rosa was not in any sort of catatonic state, and it seemed like there was a dark and powerful force within her. He also noticed that she was aware of her environment because she was able to respond to the priest's questions and commands, which to him ruled out hallucinations. He said that many of the symptoms Rosa was experiencing seemed similar to schizophrenia or even epilepsy, but what really changed his mind about the entire situation was the dark and demonic voice that came out of Rosa in the video. It really wasn't something that he had ever seen in any of his patients, regardless if they were suffering from mental illness or some sort of trauma to the brain. He classified it as something beyond anything he had ever experienced. William then showed the video to Dr. Ishak Fried, a neurosurgeon and epileptic surgery specialist also in UCLA, but also in Tel Aviv. He surprisingly echoed the same sentiments as Dr. Martin. To him, it appeared that Rosa was a caged animal, similar to what Father Amorth said the devil manifests as. He also ruled out epilepsy and determined that it was some sort of physiological state that he himself would not be able to treat. Although both doctors didn't 100% say that this was definitely a demonic possession, they both admitted that neither of them would attempt to treat whatever was going on with Rosa with surgery. Eventually, the film was released in 2017, and I've linked some of the exorcism footage below if you are interested in watching it. Later on, Father Amorth went on to write several biographies that detailed his lifelong experiences with demons and the devil. Sadly, though, he did pass away on September 16th, 2016 when he was 91 from pulmonary complications. But that is the story of Father Amorth. There is quite a lot to unpack there and ponder over. But let me know in the comments below if you guys think that possessions are real or if they're more of a mental health issue or if they're just people making these things up for attention. Also, let me know if you guys have ever experienced some sort of demonic possession, whether it was with someone you know or even yourself. I am super curious to know your opinions, so leave them in the comments below. And like I said at the beginning of the video, there is a movie coming out about Father Amorth's entire life in April of 2023. It's going to be called The Pope's Exorcist, starring Russell Crowe. So I am actually quite excited to see this movie. I am definitely a believer in the supernatural if you didn't already know. So if you guys are going to go see that movie, let me know your thoughts. All right, that does it for today's story, guys. Let me know what you guys think. And don't forget to check out my TikTok, comment, like, subscribe, share this video. Everything really does help. I love creating this content for you guys. So if you can just show a little bit of your support, it would mean the absolute world to me. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining me, and I will see you in the next video.